Thank you for joining us for the Qigong Coaching Clinic today. And hopefully you're not too stressed sitting and hoping to get into this event that we organized today. The topic of the event is stress management. So hopefully we'll be able to figure out how to relieve and reduce stress. And also we are going to jump into some of the practices so that you have something to take home with you. First of all, I want to thank you for being here today because it tells me that you are dedicated to improving the quality of your life. Unfortunately, stress is one of those things that reduces the quality of our life, isn't it? Well, we need to figure out how to manage it. We need to figure out how to deal with stress. And unfortunately, stress is an inherent part of life. We literally experience it every day, or at least most of us experience it most of the days of our lives to different degrees. How do we know that we're stressed? Well, it can be anything from feeling tension to the elevated blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, just rapid and shallow breathing. It often leads to tension in the shoulder muscles or muscles of the neck, which often gives you headaches or potentially can cause some other discomfort and pain. How else do we know that we have stress? Does anyone experience insomnia? That can easily be caused by stress. Matt says that he has no stress whatsoever in his life. Thank you. You are going to be our role model today, Matthew. And some folks experience indigestion. Has anyone experienced indigestion as a result of stress? Some people even develop ulcers or other issues. Skin conditions. I would say it's fair to estimate that majority of skin conditions are psychosomatic, most of them related to stress. Anything from reduced sex drive to reduced flexibility. And basically, there are all kinds of issues that happen in our lives because of stress. That's how we know that we have stress. We basically feel its results, feel its effects on our bodies, and also on our relationships with other people and with the world around us. How do we know that stress affects our relationships? Any ideas? Well, basically, when we are stressed, often relationships suffer in terms of communication breakdowns, in terms of certain emotional and mental projections and unfulfilled expectations, or simply some degree of anger or discontent happening that's kind of brewing inside. All of these often are examples of too much stress in our lives. Does stress affect any other areas of life? For example, if you are, Marsha, you're waving your arms, do you have some stress?
Sure. Technology. and the more stress that technology brings me, the more stressed I am trying to figure out technology. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling, multiplying machine.
Yes, thank you for suggesting that. Obviously, technology, one would think, would be here to improve quality of our lives, but sometimes it actually adds more stress. Did I get stressed because I was tinkering with technology, trying to get into my own clinic? I had done already a class this morning. I already had a meeting with an apprentice of mine. Thank you, Sean, for being here at the clinic too. It worked. And then here I'm trying to log in and something is not quite working. I could have gotten really stressed out. I'm supposed to be teaching a clinic on stress and I cannot log into it. Now, did I get stressed out? Did you see me being stressed? I wasn't particularly stressed. I wasn't too happy, but I was relatively even keel when it comes to technology bugging me down. How come? It's because I know how to manage my stress. So I may serve as a role model of not having zero stress like Matthew did, but how to manage stress if stress does occur. As a matter of fact, maybe it's not even the worst thing that could happen to us to have stress. Because if it's the natural thing that happens virtually every day, instead of putting the label bad on it, which would mean bad things happen to us every day, we actually change our relationship with stress. What would it be like if instead of putting a label bad on stress, we related to it differently? For instance, relating to stress as a challenge that is supposed to give you some new skills, potentially trigger some new responses, potentially motivate you to develop new approaches. Now, that would be an enlightened way to deal with stress, wouldn't it? And what we're going to learn today is how to do exactly that, how to reframe stress so that instead of trying to eradicate it from our lives, which is unfortunately virtually impossible, we'll learn how to mitigate it, manage it, and also prevent undue stress. Now, how is it possible to prevent undue stress? Well, we're just talking about that stress is a natural occurrence that happens to us virtually every day, whether it's physical stress, emotional stress, financial stress, or otherwise. How do we handle stress and how do we nip it in the bud so that it doesn't grow beyond certain limits? Well, there are really cool and relatively easy to implement approaches that actually will help us achieve exactly that. And I promise to share them with you today. Now, before we go much further, let me ask you if somebody would like to give an example of stress like Marsha just did through technology. Maybe somebody else has another example of stress or how it might affect you. Anyone? Dr. Sherry or Sherry raised the.
Yeah. I'm under a deadline right now, so just the stress of a deadline puts my body. I can feel it in my body, like I need to. I have this need to get something done in a timeline. So that's causing me physical and mental stress.
Probably starts with mental stress and then kind of trickles into physical realm.
Correct.
Makes sense. Deadlines. That's a really great example. Thank you so much for sharing that. How do we deal with deadlines? Are deadlines bad things? Probably not. As a matter of fact, Sherry, maybe it's a really helpful thing to have a deadline because it enforces and encourages you to get something done in time. If we had no deadlines, we would probably procrastinate. So in order to get shit done, we need deadlines. We need a little bit of extra motivation sometimes. If we consider it a bad thing, we will be avoiding it by all means, and that will lead to the same procrastination just against the deadline. However, if instead of looking at the stress as a bad thing, we look at a deadline and thinking, okay, I have to get this project done. How do I need to be in order to get it done? Now, all of a sudden, instead of a stressor, it turns into a motivating factor and may even encourage you to look at the ontological issue of how you need to be in order to get something done. So what if we actually get clear on the benefits that we can derive from having this kind of motivating factor? And instead of being stressed by the fact that the deadline is looming and we're feeling like we don't have enough time, we actually get into high gear. And that might potentially enable us to get more accomplished in a relatively short amount of time. I personally know how to operate on the deadlines, and I actually often feel like without a deadline, some projects would take me longer. Why? Because deadline is exactly the motivating factor I was just sharing, that it tells me that I need to get into high gear. It motivates me. There are certain expectations. If I don't meet the deadline, I will not satisfy people's expectations, or perhaps I will violate certain contract, or maybe I just fail myself. I don't want that. So basically, if I know that something may be a certain deadline or a certain expectation that I don't want to violate or flunk, well, that gives me an additional motivation. If we just simply look at the same issue from a slightly different perspective, often it no longer stresses us out, or instead of stressing us, it motivates us. Another thing that also happens when we experience stress is sometimes we actually become more focused. It's like laser focus. I've been to a lot of stressful situations, serving in the military. Was there any stress? Being behind enemy lines, doing search and rescue operations? You bet. Being shot at, being blown up? Yes, that's stressful. Did I develop some PTSD? Yes. And I learned how to overcome it too. Why was it so stressful? Because my life was in danger. Often, most of us nowadays live in our modern lifestyles where our lives are not even in danger, but we still get stressed. But even under the circumstances where the life is in danger, we can often develop the skill to function well despite stress by focusing our attention, by focusing our energy on survival and potentially on thriving. What's the difference between surviving and thriving, by the way? Does anyone know? Any suggestions? Come on, folks. Look alive. Any suggestions? What the difference is between surviving versus thriving?
Mental attitude.
Yeah, what's the difference in mental attitude between survival versus thriving?
You're not as stressed if you're thriving versus surviving. You're under constant fight or flight response.
Brilliant. Yes, thank you, Nancy. Anyone else?
I think with thriving, there's more joy, ease, vitality. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
probably fun and expression, more expression, easier to express love and all the things we're really here to do. Thank you.
That's right. Thanks, Diane. Yes, that's absolutely true. When we're thriving, we basically are not in danger of not surviving. So basically, survival is the situation where if we fail, we don't survive. We're dead. Or sometimes it's not physical death, but our career may not survive, or our finances will be down the drain, or our relationship will fall apart. Basically, there's going to be some dire consequences of not surviving. So surviving is definitely a situation where stress may be a lot higher because there are higher stakes. Sometimes we need higher stakes in order to really get motivated. Often we basically are not really motivated to live our lives to the fullest until the stakes are high enough. That's often because we don't really know our values. We don't really understand what drives us or what motivates us. And so we basically just go through the motions. Does anyone experience that in their lives? Yeah? Going through the motions? Well, I can see most of you folks. Feel free to turn your cameras on because I would love to see your lovely faces. And when you nod your head, I can actually tell, oh yeah, you resonate with what I'm saying. Or if you're shaking your head, I can see, oh no, the person doesn't recognize or resonate with what I have to say. That's perfectly fine too. Also, when we are surviving, not only are the stakes are higher, but also often the quality of life is not as great. However, those often are the times when, in the retrospect, we look back and we remember those times. Like, for example, if you ask anyone who served in the military, they will probably remember the times of being in combat more vividly than the times when they were on rest and relaxation, R&R. Now, I don't want to say R&R should not be allowed. That's a very important part. But the times when you are in serious trouble and situations are often more memorable. We should put it to good use. We should use that memory to learn whatever lessons we can learn from those experiences. If we survived a certain ordeal, well, let's actually become real clear on what allowed me to survive the ordeal. What did I do? How did I need to be in order to survive that situation? What resources did I need to tap into? What courses of action did I need to choose in order to achieve what I achieved? In this case, maybe just surviving. And once we develop that skill of deriving as many lessons as possible from the experiences that we went through, guess what? We no longer view those experiences as bad things that happened to us. We no longer view them as problems that happen to us that we don't want to replicate. As a matter of fact, many people who served in the military, for example, they come back from tour of duty and they're like, I want to go back. What the hell? They were shooting at you there. You were being blown up to pieces. Why do you want to go back into the war zone? It's because you feel more fully alive. That's why. When the stakes are high and you really have to attend to the issues of life and death, that keeps you fully alive. That keeps your attention finally focused. And that also means you have to really live your life more fully, more present, more careful, more attentive. And that is something that we can derive even from stressors that happen in our daily lives, not being in the war zone. We don't have to go to the war zone to live fully, to experience a greater vitality and aliveness. How do we do that? Well, we basically have to identify the triggers. What is it that helps me become more alive, more awake, more present? And we literally look for those triggers in the stressful situations and the stressors. They're virtually guaranteed to appear in our lives. we look for them. Instead of trying to run away from them, we face them. Sounds like a really stupid idea, doesn't it? Well, any psychologist would agree that the most effective way to deal with stress, to deal with fear, is by facing what you're afraid of. And essentially, that's what we're doing with the stressors. Instead of being afraid of stressors, we actually turn the tables on them. We put them to good use. We realize that they may actually give us the sense of aliveness that otherwise potentially might not be available. Or we would just simply go through the motions like we were talking about. How do we turn the tables on stress? Any ideas? Any suggestions?
I look at it as an opportunity and more of oh, isn't this interesting, rather than putting the label of good or bad. And it's not so much staying neutral, but like an observation mode. And what, like, okay, this, thanks for this great opportunity, universe. Here it is again. And that's kind of my approach.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. That's an excellent approach. That's exactly what I would say. So thank you so much for making that suggestion. You are totally right on the money. When there is a stress, we look, where is the opportunity? The opportunity for what? Well, the opportunity to get more motivated. The opportunity to be clear on your values. What is important to you? It's like if your house is burning, what is the number one thing that you're going to rescue from that house? Well, that will obviously reveal what your values are. You don't have to wait for your house to burn to become clear on your values. That's something that I help my coaching clients do. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that most people never do in their lives. Reevaluate values. It's not enough to just unearth or reveal your values. It's also important to assess, are these values really what I resonate with? Because a lot of our values and beliefs are not our own choosing. They were indoctrinated, they were embedded in our consciousness through upbringing, education, religion, media, social mores and whatnot. Basically, need to discover what's authentic to us in order to live our lives in alignment with our true values. So we go through this process of reevaluating values. If you're interested, feel free to book an appointment with me, and I will be happy to help you get that process started. Another thing that also happens when we look at the experience of stress, or we're actually experiencing a stressful moment, how long is it going to take us to recognize that this was a great opportunity to learn, to grow, to get motivated, to experience life more fully? For some people, like I said, in retrospect, we recognize that those were great times, or those were the great learning opportunities. But in the moment, they might have been feeling really stressful or problematic. How long is it going to take us to transition from perceiving something as a problem to perceiving something as a learning opportunity? For some people, it may take years. I mean, there are slow learners among us. It may take decades, right? For some folks, a lifetime is not enough. However, if we actually get busy condensing this time gap, the lapse between the event that seems to be a problem and recognition of it as a learning opportunity, what if we condense it to just a matter of hours? Then we spend just an hour or a few hours struggling, and then we realize, oh, this is a learning opportunity. Let's get busy learning from this. How about we condense it to minutes instead of hours? Well, that would be a really intelligent way to go, right? You basically make it so that your suffering is limited to a much shorter period of time. Well, if we recognize that this is so beneficial, why don't we condense it further to seconds? So we don't really spend any time resisting or reacting the events in our lives. And we immediately or almost instantly switch into the learning state of consciousness. Learning state is different from stressed state. Instead of fight or flight, which is associated with a stressed reactive state, when you get into responsive or learning state, you're not trying to fight or flee from the lesson. It's like if you go to a lecture at college, you don't need to pick up a fight with a professor because you're not going to learn much. And fleeing from that lecture is not going to give you an ability to be better at the subject either. You basically need to stay there, pay attention, learn whatever you can. That requires getting into learning state of consciousness. And then they talk about the beginner's mind. Essentially the same thing. Beginner's mind or learning state allows you to learn a great deal without resistance or reactivity. Well, guess what? When you're not experiencing resistance or reactivity, you're not as stressed. So having the ability to switch into that learning state of consciousness is the key, is the key to open the doors to be relatively stress-free or managing your stress successfully. So if this is the important step, how do we take it? How do we switch from a fight or flight, a reactive mode, to a learning state or responsive mode? Any ideas? All right. Well, I'll give an idea.
I want to follow up of your suggestions. First of all, I want to say hi.
Good to see you, Dr. Sani.
I'm in the mood of walking,
Yes.
so that's why I apologize for having my video down.
Feel free to
Anyhow.
stop for a moment while you're talking to us.
Yes. Anyhow, I have a great experience with my mother, which I want to, as you said, bring it to the minute. And that's my best way of dealing with stress. Is when we kid had a fight, not fight, just argument. When we were child, she was immediately leaving home and taking a very short walk and coming back home. And that was the best way of getting out of the stress for the moment, then coming back and dealing with the stress. And I think this is the best planning for stress. And usually I say to my student, don't call anyone when you are under stress. Just don't pick up the phone immediately to respond. So then we need, as you're suggesting, to have a really skills for planning for these skills for stress, because stress, it just gets you. It gets to your heart, goes to your mind, and it's really, it's not good moment for the body, with all the hormones and everything is jumping, and it's going to be, and mostly most of our disease, as you said, it's coming from our stresses. So it's a very efficient way to learn about to find out the buttons that we have that brings us stress. And that's
the button is a new subject that I was going to introduce in just a few minutes. So thank you for beating me to the punch and introducing this subject of buttons. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia. It's beautiful to see you. It looks
Good
like
seeing
you
you
are
too.
doing a wonderful thing of walking in the woods.
Not in the wood. Yes, around the lake. Beautiful here, Oakland.
Right. And
That's
just your
that's
mother.
my stress, the way of my stress, you know. I choose to live right in the, you know, next to the close next to the ocean and then lakes, then just have like my mom just come down and take the walk
Exactly.
and do Qigong then.
Well, that was going to be my next suggestion.
Yes.
Walking is a wonderful exercise, and going for a brief walk, especially out in nature, is a nice way to kind of mitigate and manage your stress. And
Yes.
in general, living a sedentary lifestyle is detrimental to health. One of the reasons why it's detrimental is because it robs us of the opportunities to mitigate stress. If we don't get up and go for a walk, like Dr. Sonia Hashemi does, or for example, if we don't do Qigong or don't do any other exercises, doesn't even matter what kind of exercises you do. What matters is that you move your body. Why? Because when you move, you facilitate greater circulation of blood and lymph through your organism. Your energy is being directed towards movement rather than towards mental reactivity. You literally are refocusing your attention. And that's
And here I'm bringing you for another, you know, stress reduction. Look at here.
we can't see you now. You turn your camera off.
Oh, my camera is off. Oh, oh, sorry.
Oh, now we can see you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's a class reduction, stress reduction class. Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah. The music.
Yes.
So yeah, that's excellent. And what we do is we learn how to develop the habit of, just like Dr. Sonia's mother did, move when we feel challenged. In survival situations, it often what saves your life. Because if you are a sitting duck, it's hard to survive. What we do is we learn how to become more physically active in order to be more functional as human beings, less stressed and much more capable of resolving situations stress-free. Now, one of the things that we do is we practice Qigong, the practice of energy arts that also can be a nice exercise. One of the things that I like about the Qigong practice is that it involves movement. There are some standing or sitting meditations in Qigong practice that are relatively static, but by and large, there is a majority of them including some kind of movement. The question is how you move. If you move in a harmonious way, you also support a harmonious state of mind. If you move disharmoniously, well, it's hard to be in a harmonious state if your body is disharmonious because you are the way you move. So what we do is we learn harmonious culture of movement. Now, let me ask, maybe some of my apprentices can answer this question best. What's the harmonious culture of movement? How do you tell harmonious culture of movement from disharmonious culture? Maybe Sean or Ain or Marcia can answer this question.
Staying within the edge of your comfort zone. Relax.
Yes. Relaxing under pressure. Yes.
Relaxing under pressure. Breathing.
Synchronizing breathing and movement. So the physiology and physical actions support each other and go hand in hand. Absolutely. What else?
Well, following the edge of your comfort zone so you don't stress your body out more. And practicing discernment. Which direction does your body resonate with? Which direction does it not resonate with?
Exactly.
Following your resonance, the dream that your body has for itself. Am I sounding too much like Lama now?
That is brilliant. Well, thank you, Sean. That is exactly what I was hoping you would bring up. You develop a sense of energy resonance and experience flow. What is the flow? Well, everything is energy in our lives. We just don't perceive it as such in many cases. And everything is an ebb and flow. Changes is the most constant thing in the universe, isn't it? So we learn how to develop the recognition that things are changing. There is some flow happening in our lives. If we go against the flow, guess what happens? You struggle. You are fighting against the flow of things in the universe, the Tao. Okay, well, how is that working for you? In most cases, it doesn't work so great. That's one of the ways we create stress in our lives, kind of adding insult to injury. So what's the alternative? Instead of struggling against the flow, we can actually learn how to be in the flow. How do we learn how to be in the flow? Just like Sean mentioned a minute ago, we learn how to pay attention to the edges of our comfort zone. That's where the flow is the easiest to feel. If you're too comfortable, you're kind of residing in the middle of your comfort zone, there is not much challenge happening. You are seriously comfortable, but probably also somewhat underwhelmed. In other words, your capabilities are so much greater than the challenges that you meet. And that is usually called underwhelm and is not going to motivate you to function at the high level of your capacity. If you're overwhelmed, which means your capabilities are less than the challenges that you meet, then you are going to be struggling. You're going to be outside of your comfort zone. What does it mean? Well, you're going to be stressed and probably suffering, or at least in pain. And probably will be trying to run away, get back into the comfort zone. So you're more likely to operate in the fight or flight kind of mode. So we learn how to not be in either one of those underwhelm or overwhelm states so much, and find the happy medium, the Goldilocks challenge. We find where is this edge of the comfort zone where there's balance between comfort and discomfort, where our skills and capabilities match the challenges that we meet. Any athlete, especially a high caliber athlete, and you may know I've worked with some world-class athletes, including world champions in some arts and sports, they know that that's where they are in the zone. Or in our context, we talk about being in a flow, exact same idea. We learn how to meet the challenges and have the skills and capabilities match the level of challenge. That's when we feel like I'm capable, but I'm not particularly comfortable because there's the significant challenge. The greater the skill level you have, the more challenges you can handle. So the lessons don't get any easier as you progress in the path of mastery. The challenges actually grow. Just like if you go to school, once you graduate from the freshman level, go to sophomore class. Although that class is not going to be any easier than the freshman level class. It's going to be more challenging. We go further down that rabbit hole, the classes are going to be only more challenging, but you can handle them because you have the education and experience that led you to that. So basically, that's what we do. We learn how to turn our life into a journey of learning, the journey of constant improvement, constant enhancement of our mastery. We're talking about self-mastery. So we turn those challenges, those stressors, into the stepping stones on our path. You see, it's a really different way of looking at stress, isn't it? Instead of trying to run away from it or trying to suppress it, we actually realize that we stop stressing out about stress. We actually start using stress in order to facilitate our mastery. Without some challenges, there are very few people who become masters. Have you ever heard of anyone who would become enlightened without having gone through significant stress and suffering? I haven't. I don't think it's even possible. So it's important to experience it. We just turn it into that which makes us stronger. As they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, great. Hopefully it won't kill me, so I'm going to turn this into the opportunity for me to get stronger, to get wiser, to get more intelligent, or just simply become more aware. All of this changes the attitude towards stress. We no longer stress out about having stress. We actually become grateful for having challenges because we become grateful for the lessons that we derive from those learning opportunities. And the quicker we recognize them as such, the less time we spend suffering from having a problem. Does it make sense? Now, how do we make that so that the time gap would become so short that there would be virtually no time that we spend suffering? We have to put the learning state hat on, or the beginner's mind, turn the beginner's mind on as quickly as we can. As a matter of fact, we don't have to turn it off. We can stay in the beginner's mind pretty much all the time. Why not? There's no negatives, there is no cons, only pros to being in the beginner's mind. Now, somebody may say, well, if you're a beginner, you don't really feel confident. Well, that's a matter of confidence, not being a beginner. We can learn how to become more confident, and we'll dedicate the entire coaching session to that. I promise you, we will be exploring how to become more confident. And once you develop the rock solid confidence, they will no longer be an issue. Now, Qigong wise, there is a really cool practice that I want to introduce to you today before we wrap up, so you can take it home with you as a takeaway. It's the practice of connecting with a role model. Remember, we were talking about how it's great to have somebody as a role model. Matthew was saying that he may be a role model of not having any stress. I offer myself as the role model of somebody who knows how to manage stress successfully. And maybe you have somebody else who is a great role model of learning and growing as a result of having challenges. Who is your role model? Well, whoever it is, let's just take a moment and close the eyes and just imagine being able to connect with that person, either meeting them face to face or just observing them from the third party's perspective for a moment. And as you do that, let's switch attention to the energy that that person has, specifically focusing on the energy associated with that ability, the energy that supports the ability to mitigate stress, to transform any problem into a learning opportunity and benefit from it. Whatever that energy is, let's gather some of it into a paint bucket, as if it's an energy paint. And once you fill that paint bucket all the way to its brims, let's bring it into the present moment. And what we're going to do with it is we're going to paint the energy bubble around you. Imagine that your energy field, aura, or the Wei Qi field surrounding your body is like a bubble, round or slightly egg-shaped or whatever shape it may be. See how you can pour this energy paint to paint this energy bubble so that it would serve as a filter of perception through which whatever you look at immediately appears to be a learning opportunity rather than a problem. If one paint bucket isn't enough, you can repeat the visit with that role model of yours and get some more of that energy. And if necessary, pour another energy bucket, paint bucket on top of your energy bubble, completely repainting it so that whichever direction you look, the color of that energy bubble is such that it serves as the filter of perception through which you perceive everything as a learning opportunity rather than a problem or stressor. And notice how your breathing changes. That's right. Notice how the level of tension changes in your body. Yeah, you may have even a sigh of relief or a yawn. That's perfectly fine. Notice how easy it is to breathe, because all of a sudden you are surrounded with that energy field, facilitating recognition of everything as opportunities for learning and growing. So nothing is a problem. Everything is a lesson and an opportunity for becoming stronger and wiser and somehow else more functional as a human being. And only whenever you're ready to open your eyes, feel free to do that. Isn't it interesting how your faces are more relaxed now? And some of you are smiling. Yeah. Isn't it fascinating? Such a simple and quick and easy way to install a new operating system in your consciousness. Now, this is something that obviously requires practice and consistency. I encourage you to turn it into a daily practice, literally, just connecting with the role model. Maybe it's yourself in the past or a future, or maybe some other person, or maybe a dream character, somebody who you learn from how to be particularly resilient, how to be particularly capable of handling virtually anything that life can throw your way, and transform all problems into opportunities for learning and growing. That means that from this point on, you are living a life problems free, my friend. Now that's freaking awesome, isn't it? So feel free to ask me any questions or make any comments. I'm happy to spend a few minutes going through Q&A. Just unmute yourself and feel free to speak up.
Hey, Lama. I thank you for this. I was particularly interested in the email. It said to bring your stress with you. Let me find this.
Yeah, I did.
It said, but just by trying to bring your stress with you, you may discover both how intangible stress may be. And so can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's, as a matter of fact, one of the upaya, the so-called skillful means in Sanskrit that Buddhist teachers are known for. Basically, in Buddhism, often a person is taught, or a student is taught, to recognize that their self, the idea of who the self is of dreamlike nature. In other words, a teacher may tell the students, okay, next time when you want to talk about yourself, make sure to bring that thing that you call self with you. And the student may say, well, I am the self. And the teacher goes, well, are you sure this body is the self? How often do you feel that not like yourself? Or that you may be having a dream, you feel like yourself in a dream, but your physical body is sleeping in bed. So maybe the physical body is not the self. So where is the self? Show me it. And so that's one of the tricks of the trade among those teachers, basically encouraging the student to recognize that what they were trying to fix, get rid of, or run away from was actually a figment of imagination to begin with. Now, I did not want to go into such depth today in terms of talking about the ephemeral nature of self, but certainly stress is something that has qualities of that type to it. In other words, what we consider stress often is a figment of our own imagination. It's how we relate to something, but when you try to bring it into this coaching clinic, often it just kind of disappears. You try to grasp it and it's like, so what is my stress exactly? Now, maybe you managed to succeed at this. I don't know, Brad, you tell me.
No, I didn't have a stress to bring today.
Well, so it's not easy to get a hold of stress. And as I mentioned in that email too, if you manage to grab a hold of the stress, well, guess what? Congratulations. Now you have a handle on it. You actually have an opportunity to handle your stress instead of stress affecting you. You have in your possession instead of being in the grips of stress. You get a grip on it. Now you can actually manage it. So that was basically the trick of the trade, so to speak, or a certain skillful means to dispel the power of stress that many people think stress has over them, but in fact it doesn't. It's just simply how we react to things is what we stress from, and not often something tangible that we can bring and say, well, this is the problem in my life. Of course, we can point finger at somebody and say, well, he's a pain in the ass. But it's not even the person that is the stress. It's the relationship with that person. Somebody else may relate to that person and be fine. It's how we particularly don't resonate with that person or have certain clash of values or beliefs that create stress. Well, how about we start looking for some similarities instead of differences? When we have some stressful relationships, we often focus on differences. And the more we focus on differences, the more we wage wars. As a matter of fact, that's how pretty much every single conflict comes to existence in human history. People focused on the differences between each other. But when we focus on similarities, we wage peace. We connect with each other, understand each other better, have greater compassion. We actually begin to like each other. Wow, well, there's a lot less stress there all of a sudden. So that's basically another way to mitigate stress, focusing on things that we resonate with, that we find similar, rather than constantly focusing on differences. It applies to people, but also applies to organizations and movements and politics and anything. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Marcia, raising your hand.
Yes, I wanted to add to the conversation. You started out by describing this exercise, and would you please say the name of the exercise again?
Well, I was talking about exercise in general, and then I also mentioned developing harmonious culture of movement.
Yes. So the harmonious culture of movement is the outward expression of something, and there's something that comes before that. We're talking specifically about alleviating stress. So how do we structure something that then we call it stress? And I would suggest that it begins in our thought processes. And when what's happening with the harmonious movement that he suggested and the paint bucket process that he suggested is we're actually bringing forward a new collection of thoughts. And those thoughts, the old thoughts that cause stress, which is in the emotional state realm, and the new thoughts, which are also going to cause an emotional state realm, is something we have control over. So actually noticing what thoughts you're having is a place to begin. Like, do I have this pattern, this habit of having an experience and immediately going to, well, that's bad. Okay. Or when I can catch myself at that, can I say, okay, this thing happened and my first reaction is that's bad, but what if I got the paint bucket out? How could I repaint that thought process to, this could be a really juicy learning experience. Let me see what I can get from it. The new thought generates a new emotional state, which is in the body, and it actually has a balancing impact on the old state. So it's very powerful to have such a simple exercise that you can employ anywhere. You could be standing in the middle of the grocery store. You could be pumping gas. You could be dealing with the ex or whatever. And just like, they don't even have to know you're doing it. And you can use this mechanism to come in at that state, like the thought state or the emotional state, and just give it a whole new energy, a whole new vibration, a whole new color, if you will, and anchor that into your system and go forward with that. Okay. That's what I wanted to share.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Marcia. That is a fantastic way to kind of synthesize and compact the entire hour that I spent talking into just a few minutes. So that was excellent. Any other questions or comments, folks? Anyone who's experienced some breakthroughs today or perhaps benefited from this exercise that we just did? Repainting an energy bubble so that it serves as a filter of perception for learning and growing.
I would like to say that I got a lot out of this presentation, and I really liked the painting, the energy bubble. And I look forward to learning more and working with you in the future.
Wonderful. I would be delighted to, Sherry. Well, if there are no more questions, I see some folks are posting things in the chat. Let's see if I can actually figure out how to access the chat. I honestly don't know how to access the chat. Okay, so
So one of the chat items says, I hope there can be another PTSD workshop. I missed the other one.
yeah, and it's been recorded and it's available in our Facebook group. So feel free to just email me. I will send you the link to it. Listen, do you have a question?
Hey.
Or somebody?
Yeah. Who's talking?
I also want to thank.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please. I thought it's a very brilliant introduction you had. Thank you so much. I'm looking to spread the word and bring more people to this conference, to this workshop you're going to have as usual.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, can I say something, please? It's Lucinda here.
Of course, yes.
I don't know what happened to the timing, because I was watching here for the timing. And how long have you been online with this.
About an hour.
Yeah, well, I've been sitting here waiting and it didn't go down to 0. So I missed the whole hour. And are you going to be working with people or have you already done that?
Well, we did the exercise and I'm happy to work with you if you would like to volunteer to be in the hot seat.
Well, the thing is that I haven't heard any of the teaching, so it may be a bit, I don't
Well,
know.
it's been
What's
recorded,
Masha?
so you're welcome to enjoy the recording. Obviously, if your computer is set up in different time zone, for example, from mine, then the system is supposed to somehow automatically adjust so that the timer would run out at the correct time. And apparently it didn't work for whatever reason.
No,
So
no.
I apologize for that. And as always, it's great to see you here. Better late than never. If you would like to, you're welcome to ask me anything related to stress or anything associated with that topic. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, I've written all my little things down. I mean, it's everything you describe in your email. I could say yes to, digestion, anxiety, all these things. And I think the main thing at the moment is the interruption of sleep.
Mhm.
This is also combined in my case with pain. So the signal during the night time is for my body to move into that pain pattern. And then that adds to the anxiety and so on and so on. So that everything gets combined. I mean, it's a whole picture. It's not just one thing, as you yourself described. And at the moment, as Masha says, I can feel how my thoughts have got all caught up and entangled with everything, and it's a big muddle. And I do everything I know how to do in the way of, quietening things down. But I seem to be caught on a treadmill at the moment. Please, I would like to get off.
Do you have any insight as to what causes you stress or what causes you discomfort?
I think that's why I can't get hold of it, because it's such a powerful, it's something which I can't say to you exactly what the factor is, what the thing is that's triggering it. Can you ask me another question, please?
Yes. If you talk to somebody else who tells you that they have an insomnia and pain and anxiety and all the other symptoms that you mentioned that you had, would you be able to say, of course, you don't see it from where you're at, but from my perspective, yeah, I can tell that you're doing this and or that is causing you discomfort and suffering.
No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay, sometimes looking at the same situation from third party's perspective helps, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
If you imagine a movie about your whole life,
Mhm.
and you can rewind it or fast forward it to any particular episode, how far back would you need to rewind this movie to identify the beginning of this particular cycle of struggle or suffering?
Oh, I think it would go right back to early childhood. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happened?
Sorry?
what happened in your early childhood that
Well, I mean, I think what happened was I grew up in with a mother who was very anxious, and therefore we learned to live with this anxiety and respond to it by putting pressure on, rather than going, oh, hang on, let's have a look at this. And then, okay, that's part of the conditioning and fine. But then as I got older, when I had this problem with shingles and I've got the nerve pain left, it's as if I then picked up again this link. I mean, this is all in my mind. I'm using words, but I have to try to say something about it, because it is really difficult to but there is obviously so much emotion in there, and I can say that I know something about this, but actually I don't think I'm very friendly to myself here.
well, and apparently you had a role model of your mother who was not a particularly successful role model of managing stress. Do you happen to know anybody else who would be a more successful role model of stress management, dealing with challenges in their lives, becoming more resilient, less reactive?
Right. Whew. That's very interesting. I think that what happens with me is that I can respond to somebody who is more relaxed, more easy. And for a little while, my body loves that, and everything calms down because I feel it very much in my body. But it doesn't take long before all the tensions start coming back in again, and the reactions and all that. So there's something that I haven't been able to resolve, really resolve here, if that's the right word.
I understand that you haven't been able to, but do you know somebody who has been?
In the way they live and so on.
Yes, somebody who learned how to transition from struggling and surviving to thriving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do know people. Yeah.
Wonderful. Anybody in particular who comes to mind? You don't even have to tell me the name, but
No. I mean, I've just recently met a woman who is she's gone through things in her life, but she's now, with herself and comfortable and getting older like me, which is helpful, with somebody. So yes, I can see she's there, she's in her body, she's with herself, and she's available to other people. That's the thing. That's the thing I notice, is getting so involved that I'm not available. I'm not open.
I get it. So imagine watching a movie about your life and meeting with that person. Doesn't matter if it's the first time you met or any other time. Imagine being able to perceive the energy of that lady. In particular, focusing on the quality of energy associated with this ability to overcome adversity, become more resilient, and staying available to life.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is an energy paint, I wonder if you can collect it in a paint bucket, literally gathering some of this energy into a paint bucket and bringing it into the present moment. And what I invite you to do is to actually use this energy paint on the energy field or energy bubble surrounding your whole body.
Mm.
It's like the field of energy around your body is like an aura.
Yeah.
And you can literally paint the bubble around you in the color of that energy that you just brought along.
Mm.
So that the walls of this energy bubble begin to serve as filters of perception through which you perceive everything in a way that allows you to respond instead of react to things, to recognize learning opportunities rather than problems, and to thrive as a result.
Yeah.
Just let me know when you complete that painting project.
Well, I can visualize it and start to get a sense of this. And I think it's something I'd like to do often until it becomes quite easy for me to be within that energy, my own energy field there, with this different quality.
Marvelous. Well, notice how your body has just responded to the change in the quality of energy around it. Your body alignment changed. Notice how your face became more relaxed and start smiling a little bit. Is it easier to breathe now?
Not yet.
Okay, so that's going to be something that, as you said, might become an ongoing practice. I would invite you to do this practice on a daily basis if you're inclined. It literally can transform how you perceive things around you.
Yeah.
And if you do this, for example, in the morning, it will have certain effect over the course of the entire day. So wherever you go, whatever you experience, you perceive it through this filter of perception that gives you the ability to stay in that beginner's mind, the ability to learn things instead of reacting to them. And of course, if you need more help with that, you're welcome to book an appointment with Marcia is raising her hand, so perhaps you can connect with her, and she is wonderful in that capacity. And I would definitely encourage you to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I'm just sorry about missing the. But can I get the recording, Lama?
Yes, yes. You are more than welcome to go to our Facebook group called Flow and Thrive, and the recording will be in.
It'll be on there. Okay. And can I think I'm a member of it. I think I'm already in there. So and oh yes, please do some more of these. They're wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it relatively regularly. Last weekend was the holiday here in the United States called Thanksgiving. So we just simply moved it to the following weekend, which is today.
Yeah, which is
the next coaching clinic in 2 weeks from today. I look forward to seeing you then.
Very good.
Feel free to put to good use all the things that we explored and discussed today. If you need some help from me or from Marcia or from Aine or from Sean or from any of my apprentices who've been here, feel free to contact me. I will direct you to the right person or work with you myself. And I look forward to helping you more.